So. All right, everybody, Michael McGinnis here with The Ripple Effect. Hey, we are great opportunity to have a guest speaker today, Krista Gorman. And she's going to help to acquaint us with really the whole concept of death and what's next. And, oh, wait just a sec, something coming through. Wait, darn it. What? She died, guys. She died.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. Oh,
just
wow.
a reminder.
Well, all right. So what can be prepared to talk about? Wait, just a second. Here's something through. Oh,
okay.
No. Wait a second. She's back. What? She had a what? Near Garth experience? No. Near death experience.
Near garlic?
Oh, okay. Oh my God. Yeah, here we go. You know those near death experiences, you have to put up with. They're just dying to be here. So, Krista, come on, show your face. Yay!
We are so glad you're back.
Oh my God, so am I. And to see all your faces right off the bat.
Oh, that might want to send you back. At least mine.
Do you ever long to be back in the light? We can take you there. Not with how we look, at least with the bad jokes.
I love it. I love it all.
So today, having Krista here, we're going to really be talking a little bit more advanced topics, near-death experience, right? Today, it's so fortunate. You can go to YouTube today and type in near-death experience and just see the plethora of people that have gone through this and get acquaintance with the wide variety of individuals, people's experiences, all with some common denominators, some with uniquenesses, but nevertheless, some real core beliefs and attitude and things change as the years. So today we're really just going to drift into a campfire-like conversation with Krista. She's going to start by sharing a little bit about, just what started the experience, some of the things that she sort of witnessed herself in a particle format from what I was just gathering, and then we'll just launch into a question and answer kind of format and discussion on really, okay, so what? Had the near-death experience. Now what? What are some of the real implications of that for you in your life? And I know I have a burning question I'd love to ask somebody who had a near-death experience, but let's go from there. So without further ado, Krista?
Yeah, okay. So my circumstances were that I was in labor with my daughter and I suffered a cardiorespiratory arrest during labor. So during that period of time, I stopped breathing and then my heart stopped beating. And the first thing I realized was that I could see something below. I didn't have any name for it. It was my body, but I didn't have any earthly identification to say that what it was. I didn't remember I was a human being. I didn't have any knowledge of being here. But I was still Krista. I was still me, my consciousness, but without all of the earthly attachments to reference myself to. And I watched as the body below, and I watched these black particles come racing up to where my vision was. And I sort of hung there in a static kind of cloud and very detached, very sort of neutral feeling. I had a feeling of interest, of curiosity about what was going on. But ultimately I left that room. I was actually tugged, encouraged to leave. And I agreed to go. And at that point I started to move very, very, very fast through the wall and through a bright white space. And then I was into another space where I was reabsorbed into the same particles I was, but very, very dense and still moving imperceptibly fast. And in that space, there was this expansiveness, like it could go on infinite. I could go on infinitely, but at the same time, I was a very, very, like one single dot, very condensed. And then I stopped moving and I had this download. And the download was sort of like, it was like a funnel of information. And it all boiled down to one point, and that was love. And it was all the questions I'd ever had in my life, explanation for this or that or the other thing. And it was always went back to love. And yeah, so the particulate, I was this particulate matter in my near-death experience, and I was I was energy, and I was my consciousness. And there were the events of my near-death experience. It's been 20 years, almost 21 years since it happened. And I've had a lot of time here to reflect on it and to grow as a human being in this body, and learn from it and explore. And so it's meant, over the years, it's meant more and more to me. And right now I'm understanding more the particle part of who I was, this sort of almost tangible thing. And I'm exploring the ideas of energy, dark matter, dark energy. There's also what comes in is that my intentions in my near-death experience were met with the universe, sort of source, sort of meeting me where I was and helping me along. But it was also introducing things for me to learn from. So there's the idea of law of attraction. There's this law that exists that we can't see or touch, but it existed in my near-death experience. So, like, I'm still exploring all of that, and it's really exciting.
Based on what I know, what I understand from our friend Tom Sawyer, that moment where you went faster and faster, through a white space, and the massive expansiveness and the single dot at the same time. I would take a stab, see if it's appropriate, that your your awareness, your consciousness, that was a let's say, and the image of the expansion of your mind. This is the imagery that you're telling us,
Mm-hmm.
indicates to me possibly the expansion of your mind at that point. The speed, Tom often talked about, going the speed of light or conceivably faster, and then arriving at this place, that beyond that notion, beyond that realm, you'll come to that great understanding and that great love.
Like the one mind, like
Yes.
being in the one mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the brain, the idea, my own understanding again is evolving, and I come from a scientific kind of background,
Yeah.
Even I got my degree in psychology, my bachelor's of science, and I could have gotten my BA, but I didn't want to learn a language. I wanted to learn the science. So I came from that place, and then going on to PA school and learning the science there and being scientifically oriented, while at the same time having this spiritual aspect of myself. I find that my definition of what the mind is has drastically changed over the years. And my experience in my death of being of the one mind, we use the words to describe something that's indescribable with human words. Right. So to say, the mind the thinking mind is sort of a secondary organ. It's the receiver of the greater aware consciousness information, which is in pure energetic form that we cannot visualize with our eyes. And it's sort of a conduit where, and this is being discussed a little bit in this book I'm reading, Molecules of Emotion, where the actual physical, proteins in our body make up these other proteins that then carry the information to the receptors in the various parts of the body. And they have an interaction there, an exchange of information.
Right.
So this physical, 10-pound or however much it weighs, mine isn't quite that much, I don't think, but it's just the filter for the information, the
Yeah.
attaching point, and then it filters through the body. Yeah. So, but the one great consciousness, well, that's the mystery still. Yeah.
Right. I was thinking in the terms of not the brain, but mine would be the full 10 pounds because of the rocks, but the but the but the greater meaning of the word mind,
Yeah.
the part of you that's more energetic than physical. And
Absolutely. For me, that was my experience. Yeah.
okay, and it's that part having come from this lifetime in physicality, expanding to take on, to be able to be a part of, or take its natural place in the
Oh, I love
larger
that.
scheme.
Yes,
That's
it's a
good.
natural place.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. You really touched on it there.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, the rocks get in line.
Well, at least you have rocks. That's where it counts. So yeah, in fact, related to that question, because I definitely want to come back to consciousness, and I know for myself, I've been enthralled lately with reading about the topic, writing about it. Michio Kuku, I think is his.
Kaku.
Yes, this has been, a great resource for me just to see him sort of just blowing his mind out with all of these concepts that really make a lot of sense. And I'd love to hear your recent interpretations and what you're learning from it. But I want to sort of go back to the coming back from the near-death experience for me. I've had my own experience. I think Tom categorized it to me. Would you call it, Tom, NDE for dummies? Something like that. That was my experience. I had one of those. Oh, you just went through one of those. But in any cases, it's a story in itself. But the effect of it was this enthralled, just seeing experience life in a whole nother dimension. But then it started to, what's the saying it goes is that before enlightenment, chop the wood and carry the water. After enlightenment, chop the wood and carry the water. Right? It's that the full circle of sort of coming back despite all of this enlightenment and realizing you've got to come back. And I know I went through a long period of sort of depression from this. I just wanted to go back and live in that space. And, I've heard from a couple of near-death experiencers that had talked about the reentry. Coming back was a period that could last for years, that was often portrayed with depression. Did you have sort of a reentry effect from it? And what was that like?
Oh, wow. Yeah, big time. Well, it rocked my world. I had just graduated from my PA program 3 weeks before I had my daughter. So I knew every nuance of the science that they taught us. And because I wanted to help my patients. I wanted to know everything. So I studied very hard and I worked really hard. And when I came back, I knew nothing. I had no recall that I had gone to PA school. I didn't recall the information. And that was very purposeful, because I was meant to sort of erase that part of who I was in a way, so that I could focus on what my now sort of job or task or mission or whatever endeavor should be or would be here, which is to share the love, to be that love and to share the love. Well, I didn't know how to be that love in this world. I didn't feel supported. We live, as you know, I'm sure you guys would agree, that we live in a world which is ego-based, fear-based, and masculine, in how we conduct ourselves in general. And so as a female energy, this love energy coming back into my old physical body, into my old life, with the same people around me, all expecting me to be who I was when I'm not any longer, was really challenging. So I took 10 years of just sort of trying to plod along and live as I thought I could, with having this experience in my life, and still maintaining my old life and moving on with the hopes and dreams and aspirations that my ex-husband and I shared together at the time. But there comes a breaking point, and it's really about being, in general, for all, and it happens for many of us, and we all have it, is whether we recognize it or not, is that living as our true selves in this life can be a real challenge, and some of us never do. And those of us who can and who do, experience a tremendous amount of joy and freedom. So, and I knew that joy and freedom, I had experienced it already in my near death. So I wanted to bring that into my life and live it. So yeah, it's taken, I mean, it's almost 21 years, and I'm doing pretty good, but and living my truth.
It's close now. It is close.
Real close.
Well,
But
I have a question about your daughter. I mean, you were giving birth. What was going on with your daughter? I mean, and you in that relationship, because I mean, you were a different person having a child.
Yeah. It was a medical emergency. It was I had an amniotic fluid embolism, which what happened was my daughter, I was in labor, and my daughter's heart rate just dropped to about 60 on the monitor. And I knew as a practitioner that if that happens one time when a woman's in labor, you do a C-section, because that could mean the baby's in distress, and it can happen again, and then you can lose the baby. So right away, I knew that they were going to do a C-section, and they came in. You put an internal monitor on the infant, and it's barbaric. You screw it into the scalp. They say that the baby can't feel it, but that's not true. Maggie, I think, reflexed when she felt that, and she kicked really hard, and she kicked amniotic fluid into my bloodstream. So the body sees it as foreign, attacks it with, or surrounds it with these cells to get rid of it. They form clots, and this is all happening like instantaneously. Travel back to the lungs. They block off all the blood, the veins in the periphery of the lungs, and then more proximal, to the point where you're not perfusing any oxygen now, and your heart can't get any oxygen to pump. So the heart starts going into a ventricular fibrillation, which is not sustainable for life. So that's what I started to feel right away, was this palpitation and then short of breath. And then I just went out. So that was the situation there. When they got me in, they wheeled me literally across the hallway in labor and delivery into the OR, called a code blue. My OB was literally in the building next door. He dropped everything. He heard it, crossed a breezeway, and was right there. And all these other physicians that were there responded, and they delivered Maggie by emergency C-section. Well, she had a heart rate of 60 at the time, and that was it. She was blue. She was flaccid. She wasn't breathing.
So she had a near death too.
I believe she did. There's been some indications to me that maybe, something happened to her, and one day she might want to explore it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I would think you would have, some interesting, it's an interesting dynamic to have a near death with another person.
Yes.
In a sense,
Especially the connection between mother and daughter. Wow.
Yeah. And when they handed her to me, it was 6 days later, and they handed her to me for the first time, and I held her, and this wasn't the first time we were meeting. And I was my face didn't reflect my internal environment, where I was very much at peace. And I had the assumption that, everything was through feeling in my near-death experience. All the communication that occurred during my experience was all through feeling. So I felt in myself that everyone else around me could feel what I was feeling, and knew. So I was feeling this like reconnection with Maggie, like, oh, it's so good to see you again, you know, like kind of like I'm holding you, oh, this is true, like. And then I thought I could almost feel everybody around me like being concerned because I wasn't showing any emotion. So I thought, well, I should do the things that they usually do. So I counted her toes. I'm like, I should count her toes and make sure she has all of them, and like hold her hand and like do all those little things. But in the meantime, like it almost felt like she and I were having this whole conversation.
Well, that's fascinating. It is because you must have, I mean, you obviously didn't have a simultaneous, you weren't communicating together during that.
Right.
It doesn't sound like, but you were going through a symmetrical experience in some sense or another.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting for you to if she were able to share that or had a recognition of that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me because we
Yeah.
are all one.
Yeah.
And so, just as we're sitting here, the five of us, we all went through that experience in some regard because we are interconnected. So, I mean, that's the one thing we've been doing in our little group here is sharing experiences. And it's almost like have a reunion of the self, bringing the different parts together and sharing our stories, and we're growing.
Yeah.
Parts of we're
Collectively.
individually growing as well as collectively.
Right. Right. And the just the whole, as in a human form, the experience of compassion is the physical manifestation of the understanding and knowing that we are one.
Yes.
You have heroic acts of compassion where strangers will sacrifice their life to save somebody. That's just like the nth degree of displaying the fact, yeah, you and I are one.
Yeah.
I have a question also. You mentioned seeing, and I've often wondered how it is that a being sees without physical eyes.
Yeah.
Is that a visual experience?
It
Because you
was
described it pretty visually.
a purely visual experience. Like I like to say that I had two senses during my experience. One was sight and one was feeling. So feeling is like the sixth sense or whatever, the seventh sense maybe. But yeah, the experience of being of emotions manifesting in that realm was profound. And I didn't recognize that for many years. And I'm still exploring it, and again, I'm tying it to science, the research that's been done behind the expression of emotions physically in the body through these peptides, through these ligands and receptors, and from different parts emanating from different parts of the brain and different organs in the body.
So we have other ways of seeing other than actually physically seeing other than the eyeballs.
Yeah, well, intuition is a form of it's an emotional vision, I guess you could say. Intuition is deeply rooted in the we and the we are one. Yeah.
I remember Tom, our buddy Tom, telling a story about a woman who was blind from birth having an NDE in which she could see, and then came back to her blind body. And he said that was just a dirty trick. They should have, after letting her see, they should give her sight.
They should give her sight. Yeah, she should win that in the whole deal.
Exactly. And
yeah,
as some people have said, as Tom had said, Tom's the first one I heard say it, and I've heard others say it afterward. He could see in 360-degree spherical vision. You could see up, down, each side, behind and front, all at the same time. Does that match your experience?
No, not in my experience.
Okay.
I had an awareness of everything, but
Right.
I didn't have the sight. I had the sight, like I suppose even less than I have now, because I don't recall much peripheral vision. Because I remember I actually like turned and directed my attention to what it was that I chose to give it to.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
zoom ahead, and now you are you now, and you'd mentioned beforehand you're still actively finding different areas of your own growth things. I love how you're referencing science. To me, that's I'm spending a lot of time because it's almost spiritual for me in the conversations that I'm hearing. You know, that they really are seemingly talking about things I've heard from near-death experiencers, et cetera. But what are some what's some of number one, I'd love to know what's like the gift do you was there a gift that some people get they come back that you have, and how do you use it? And number two, what are some of the focuses now for you? You've gone through this incredible experience, you have this understanding. What do you focus on now?
as far as the gifts go, my intuition is like through the roof, and I feel like I can predict the future in gross terms. I don't flaunt that at all. It's just it's stuff that maybe will come up in conversation with my husband mainly, maybe a little bit with other people, my colleagues, but I sort of see the writing on the wall, and it's, you know, in how I am, I see things neither as good nor bad, just as they are, and that I intend then for love in the world and for myself. So I just intend for the greatest good for everyone all the time. And that's powerful, the power of intention in just in one individual.
So there's change involved in that as well, I would assume. If you're loving, that there's a potential for the changing of what you see as the projection.
Well, yes, and that's a really great point, and that's something that helped me early on when I started to really allow my near-death experience to manifest in me now and who I am in my life, and that was about 10 years in. And I started to meditate, and I created. I needed sort of an outline, like a blueprint to live my life. I needed some things to focus on, to be, so that I could help. It would help me feel better, and it would help improve my life. And I knew that once I did that my life would improve inevitably. So the sort of switch in my own body's energy, my focus, things started to change around me, and I observed it, and people responded to me differently. And I wouldn't even have to be in the same room with them. I could be on the phone. You know, I was working in the emergency room, and I talked to a lot of physicians about patients that they didn't want to have to get out of bed and come into the hospital to see. And they would not be very nice on the phone often in the beginning. When I shifted my own energy, and my focus was on you know, the best outcome, positivity, what have you, those interactions became so easy. Like it was like night and day. And I marveled at this, because my colleagues would say to me, you just seem so like everything's so easy. Why don't they give you a hard time? They always give me a hard time. Like it's just a difference in how we are. It's just, I don't know. They like me better than you. I don't know. But they feel me. They can feel me. They don't know it, but they're feeling me, and they're responding to me because they're seeing themselves in me, and they're settling into that in that moment.
Are they experiencing the love coming from you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quantum. It travels.
Right.
It
Yeah,
doesn't. There's no barriers to it.
your love is integrating with them,
Yeah.
and therefore
Yep.
they feel better, literally,
Yes.
because
Hmm.
you are part of who they are, and you're in a positive frame, so that coming together of those particles creates it's a balm for them or a
Yes, I
medicine.
love that. Yeah. Yeah. They don't even know it.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't even know it. I didn't realize what was
Right.
happening. Yeah.
Someone told the story about our buddy Tom, who was at a talk one time with a journalist who was there that was taking exception to everything. You know, a remarkably skeptic woman, and just dead on physical universe. That's it. Boom, 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 boom. And other people were trying to talk to her, and they're getting nowhere. And Tom talks to her, and and his comment was and everybody says you should have seen the change in her in in that conversation. And Tom says when she got out to her car, she had to step down to get down off of cloud nine to get into her car. And I've seen that happen so many times with Tom and with someone he's talking to. They
Mm.
just get that far away look like they're being carried off somewhere. And I could tell he's doing his thing,
Yeah.
and it's sharing the love inside him. That's such a cliche,
But it
but
is.
yeah,
It is.
uh,
It's him, and it's that person recognizing that
yeah,
love, remembering. They're
yeah,
remembering who they are
At a very deep level, right?
at a
right,
very deep
Very, very
level.
deep level. Yeah.
And that's transformational. That's healing.
Yeah.
very,
That is so healing. Yeah.
that's
S-
Tom ended up being a champion of the phrase "attitude changes everything."
Mm. Hmm.
So what you were just talking about, and our Tom here was talking about, is you get a generalized pick. You see the writing on the wall, what's coming,
Hmm.
but the attitude that you attend to it with can be
Hmm.
a balm on the worst of it. Could be a
Hmm.
balm on it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And my attitude towards it helps shape it. The
yeah,
attention I give it, whatever attention I choose to give it, helps to shape it further.
And we were talking
right.
I think last week about maybe last or week or so ago about receptiveness to that healing.
Receptivity.
What's been your experience with whether or not it matters if the other person is receptive?
That's a really good question because I've been taught. I took a course in integrative quantum medicine that the person doesn't necessarily even have to know that what you're doing. But for me, I don't really have a concrete answer for that, my own understanding, because there's the idea, the mm, concept of resistance. Um, and resistance to energy is it doesn't discriminate. It just is there. So if you've got resistance to anything, you're going to prevent the flow of the energy through you, the flow of the
Right.
molecules in your body, the healing molecules to work. So I'm not really convinced that you know resistance doesn't matter. That's something
Resistance
more to
as
explore for me.
opposed to not knowing or just a general sense of receptiveness or not even knowing that so resisting is a thing in itself, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's sort of separate. It's like
Don't
if
come near
people
me. Right.
if people pray for you, you don't know they're
Right.
praying for you. That
Right.
energy is real. That energy is healing energy. It's love
Right.
energy. It's directed towards you. But if you've got resistance about loving yourself, then you're preventing energy from flowing in your body. You can receive that energy, but what your body does with it, I don't know. It's a fascinating area to like contemplate and explore.
Does it lurk? Does it hang around you?
Around you,
Lingering hope, like
in your etheric field,
yeah,
perhaps.
and then
I
when
don't
you are
know.
receptive or not resisting, then
It allows it in. Yeah. I like that idea. I like that someone could benefit if they're not already.
eventually, I mean,
Eventually.
it was
Yeah.
given, and it's not as if a free love or the gift of love or not unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that it would linger.
Mm-hmm.
That love is always around us, so
Mm-hmm.
it would like an angel would hang around until we're receptive,
Right. And then let it
not
in.
not pull away.
Right.
Well, I don't,
Sort of like Tom, what you've been for us. You're lingering around until we get it.
well, I'm older, I'm
Yeah.
waiting.
The why? Yes. Well, okay. Keep lingering then.
One of the most patient men in the universe, right there.
Lord.
So on to
Yeah.
some of your recent thoughts, thinking, what do you do now as a person who's gone through this amazing enlightenment and now still here in day-to-day life?
Yeah. Well, I have been, like we had talked about a little bit about this before, is this exploring the link between myself as I knew myself in physical form in my near-death experience as particles, and the fact that the main mode of communication of information was through feeling and sight, but focusing on the feeling aspect of it and emotions and how they're mitigated in the body and how that information is physically transferred from one place to another in the body and how it affects our organs, how it affects our entire physical body. I'm exploring that through reading Molecules of Emotion by Candace Pert, who is a neuroscientist who discovered the opioid receptor, which was a huge deal back in the early 70s. And then she went on to discover receptors for many other things, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, all of those, just everything that helps to transfer molecules, information in our body. She was a part of a lot of it. And so she started to make the connection that, these receptors coming from the brain, or these ligands, they're called, the little molecules that transfer information to the rest of the body originate in the brain. So they help to basically create our health state. So, and I'm just getting towards the end of her book, and I'm doing some sort of offshoots, like little areas of research, where I'm also reading about the etheric field and the layers of the etheric field that are proposed that human beings have, actually all living creatures have, and how that can be influenced, and how it can reflect the state of health of the organism itself. So and I'm just like kind of just sort of scratching the surface and just contemplating it all. That, along with, ideas about physics in terms of, what makes up the universe, what's the energy that makes up the universe. And we have the idea of dark matter and dark energy, and these two forces, and that the fact that the universe is expanding. And I have this theory that love is one force and law of attraction is the other, because those are the two real forces that I experienced in my near death. And, and that we, one informs the other. And yeah, so it's, again, I'm just sort of trying to understand it in the context of my near death and what I've experienced afterwards in my life, as far as, you know, observing the fact that I'm a pretty powerful creator. And, you know, we are all powerful creators. But speaking from my own experience, I'm a pretty powerful creator, and I can create wonderful things to manifest in my life. And so one of those things is my husband. And another right now is there's a little character that Ainsley, my husband, and I are working with, that my daughter drew when she was 10 years old. And it's just of a little cartoon bug. And we call him Buggy. And he has some friends, Buggy Fly, Buggy Bee, and Lady Buggy. And they all have little red hearts on them. And they're about sharing loving kindness in the world. So we're going to sort of take them and create a little buggy world for children, where we'll have storybooks and plush toys and T-shirts and things like that, and you know, remind children of who they are, and that we're here to love each other and care for one another, and be kind, and love our natural world. So that's like another little thing that he and I are getting, a sort of side hustle, we're calling it. We're working.
Yeah. I lived in Boston for 3 years as part of my journey, and ran into a woman named Isabel Hickey, who I think she was a near-death experiencer, but she was a famous astrologer and so forth. But she had a thing called the Friday Night Fix, and we would do meditation and healing and so forth. And one of the things that she came up with was a term for the subconscious, which was subby. And she encouraged people to name their subby with a name like what you've done. And so it just reminds me of that little creature is a part of, is an what is it, the word, an extension,
yeah.
or of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so it's a way of identifying a part of you through a little bug or an object that you can have a conversation with, and that you can, you know, see yourself like a mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and remind children specifically, and adults too, of who they are, like what Richard does with his clowning, and the joy that he brings, and the laughter, and that's you know, I see when you're in character, that's an extension of you, for sure. You even in a more pure form.
without all the crap that's normally hanging around me.
Yeah.
I would like to introduce to Krista that Tom Williams here, I call the original Santa Claus.
Yes,
Real
I
Santa
see.
Claus.
I see it.
I play Santa during the season, but he is. I'll say
He
that.
is.
We all are. We all are Santa.
Hey, Bruce, you've been quiet. And so, as we know, when Bruce talks, God listens. So.
Well, yeah, I do have a list, but I was going to say, I dare say children can more easily remember than we adults can. But it's good to nudge them to not forget as they're growing, which we all tend to do. But one thought that I had, I heard you say something that I heard Tom say a lot as well, and that was that it was so difficult for him to explain what a near-death experience was like, because you cannot put it into words. And you can't analyze it scientifically because it's not a repeatable thing. And I was thinking about when you said when you first came back, it was so difficult because you didn't feel supported. And I imagine it was so difficult for you to explain it to anybody that you knew what had happened, and they would have had no concept of any kind of real appreciation for what you had gone through. And that's probably why. And you know, I do a bit of writing myself, and so I'm keen on words, and describing the indescribable is my ultimate goal, I think, you know, with my life. But um, and also another thing that Tom said, that he thought the best form of communication was through the heart. And you talk about love, and you talk about feelings, and that feelings are what informed your experience and that sort of thing. And I'm hearing you say heart. You experience things through your heart.
Yes.
And these guys have heard me say this. I always feel like there's two extremes of the spectrum. On one extreme is fear, the other is love. Everything else, all the emotions fall in between those two things. And you're right. There's, in this world that we live in, there's way too much on the fear end of the spectrum, way too much. And that I also think that, and ego and greed, all that stuff is on the fear end of the spectrum. And that everything that Spirit's about is love. Like you said that your near-death experience, it all boiled down to love. And that's what every guru I've ever heard talk about, every religion I've ever heard talk about, that's exactly what they're saying. It's all about love. And the more we can become more spiritual, to raise our molecular vibrations, to feel that love, you're feeling spirit, you're feeling at one-ment with the rest of the world. And that's the best thing that you can do, is to strive towards that. Like you said, compassion. That to me, that ought to be the goal for all of us, is raising our level of compassion.
Does that describe the structure you found to set your life to? I'm forgetting the exact words you used, but you said it's like having an outline or a structure that you came upon that you can apply to your life.
Yeah, exactly. I was at a point about 10 years in where I was just miserable within myself, despite having had this amazing experience and being, you know, and having the material things. I didn't have the emotional support at home, and I was searching for something to soothe me in my life. And I started meditating. And during my meditations, I wouldn't necessarily experience anything, but after a few weeks, I noticed that I was calmer and I was more centered and I was clearer and just how I felt. And then I started journaling after meditation, and I would just write words that came to me. And I compiled 12 words that I realized when I actually practiced these words in my life, that I feel more in alignment with who I was in my near death and closer to myself. And so I call them 12 principles for daily living. And they're not things that can necessarily be defined clearly and concisely. They need to be experienced. So it's the experience of these 12 principles on sort of a daily, ongoing, moment to moment basis, along with the overarching concept of being lovingly detached to people, places, things, and also understanding the power of my vibration, my own intention, the law of attraction, which was very, very active in my near-death experience, very present. So Yeah, I use those things as my I use them as my guide in my life.
Mhm.
And that's what helped to transform my life.
Would right now, just to make sure, to let whoever may be watching this later know that those 12 aren't actually secret. You have them
No,
in your book.
I do. No, I wrote them down, and I it's funny because I wrote them in the book, I Died and Learned How to Live, and my focus was the principles, because I felt like if I don't know how to live in this world, having had an NDE, there's a lot of other people out there who also don't know how to live in this world as who they are. And so these can help other people. So I put a little bit I just ran through my NDE real quick at the beginning of the book. And then I have the principles and a little bit of a description about what they are for me and how I understand each of them. And yeah, it's on Amazon.
Hey, good. Yes. And
So
you have a great website too. You have a great
Oh,
website.
thank you. Yeah, my little blog that,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, thank you.
In the time we
It's for
have
everybody.
left, I'd love to take advantage of your intuition, if to
Oh,
just
okay.
let that
Before,
be.
Mike, before we get into that, I want to get into that. I'm looking forward to that, but I would like also, to anybody watching this video, run it back to the point where the first time Krista said, "I'm a pretty powerful creator," and freeze it and look at the expression on her face. There's absolute knowing. It's not confidence, it's knowing, but from experience, the truth of that. And I want to say that's attainable for all of us. So thank you for that brief little, there was that little bit of sideways. You're letting it in on a little secret here. I'm a pretty powerful creator. You have seen it be.
Thank you for that. Everyone needs to know that. Yeah. How to
Was
Okay,
heal
it
Mike,
themselves.
Maria
back to you.
Williamson? The biggest fear we have is not what we're the
Not
bad,
about how bad we are, but about how really
how
good we are.
powerful we really can be.
Powerful we really are.
Yeah. And a lot of what you said too, and listen to Abraham Hicks, and a lot of manifestation and discussion there seems, incredibly powerful. And I like how you portrayed that, because as I am applying, I like the word, the principles. In fact, I teach people a lot with Benjamin Franklin, the 13 virtues, just the power. And here's this simple yet amazing person who just steadily and every evening spent time reviewing his 13 virtues and journaling on them too. And it just reminded me of that when you're saying it, really powerful. But, I'd love to just hear you just share. Is there thoughts? Is there things that you have a great sense of knowing and intuition that would be relevant for here, whoever, whatever? I'd just love to open it up, and knowing that that's your gift, have a chance to be able to share it.
Oh, thank you. Wow. I would say with, living through the last year plus some months during a pandemic, the tendency has been in the media, the popular media has been to angle the story towards fear. But what I'm seeing, and I don't watch the news by choice, because I do things based on how I feel, if there's something external there, and I don't feel good when I watch the news, so I choose not to watch it. But the media that I am in tune with, I have seen so many profound things on there in terms of people's growth. People now we're expanding. We're expanding as spiritual beings here on this earth, and it's happening so fast. It's all good. It's all ultimately good. while we can get bogged down in the minutia of little, you know, of day-to-day life and focus ourselves on things being challenging, things being difficult, things being terrible, you know, however we want to describe it, ultimately, really, it's all good. And if we can choose to focus more on the good, then that will be our experience. And we string together moments of that, and we have a wonderful life. And we're here to experience joy. We're here to experience a vital body, you know, and have relationships with other people, loving relationships. We need that, the contrast of the challenges and ego and fear and all of that in order to gauge where we are in our spiritual growth, right? And because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't know where we are. We'd all be love. So it's all purposeful, and to see it as something that's a purposeful and a lesson and temporary state of being, because you can always shift into something that feels better, that is more of who you are in alignment with. And, you know, Abraham Hicks, you mentioned, one of the things that I heard Abraham Hicks say is that the degree to which you feel separate from or bad is the same degree that source is loving the heck out of you in that moment. So you are never alone. You're always connected, no matter what you think, you know. So get out of here and get in here and live from here, and your world will change for the better.
And the world will change.
And the world, absolutely. It's inevitable. That's all we have to do is just be, and be, you know, and intend happiness for ourselves.
Yes.
That's it. And then life is
Amen.
great.
Thank
We
you.
can say that the world is changing for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, amongst even all of what we see and very prevalent, the negative, the frustration, the ego, power, you know, it's that essence I keep hearing, getting reminded of. It's still all in divine order. It's,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
it's in process,
again,
right? It's
yep.
it's by experiencing that contrast can actually help do us good.
Yes. Yes. Be more of who we really are.
And I very much appreciate that, you know, you're sharing that too. Is I know that's how I recently a blog on the pandemic and the fact that it was this incredible silver lining. You know, what we see as all of this pain and suffering really has been a catalyst for so much growth, awareness. For the first time, the world together has seen it. We have all been exposed to this, and to be able to see things more clearly, and that in itself will have an impetus, a forward momentum to the positive.
Absolutely. Yes.
I want to be very respectful of your time, and I very much appreciate your joining us and sort of just going in a very ad lib mode here, Krista. And I just, I really can only say thank you. I know from the bottom of all of our hearts, the top in some, like Tom's, but the bottom in, yes. But yes, it's a fun
Thank you
group.
so much. You guys are wonderful. This has been so, this has been the highlight of my time here. Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Well, anytime, you're welcome back. We'd love to.
Highlight of your time here during this, or the highlight of your time since, for the last 20 years?
Well, it's all now. It's all now, Richard. It doesn't matter.
It's happening simultaneously.
There is no time, right? It's all now. So.
Sorry, right, got it.
That's fantastic. Well, anytime, I'd love to, have a chance to hear from your husband too. And it sounds like you have some fascinating conversations, and that's what I find I have such a longing for, are these conversations. And that's why this group in large part exists, is just, I'm just not the superficial person anymore. And I have this thirst for these great conversations, and this is what boosts up me for the next, until the next week, right? So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Cool. Awesome.
That's
Thank you so
great.
much.
And then also an idea, you maybe can start an ethereal dating service there too, of how you connected, with your husband.
That's the next book. The next book.
Yes,
It's
because
not bugs anymore. It's
that's right.
moving
People
on.
like me, I think the common denominator here is all of us. Here's 4 men, and I can speak for myself is, it would be nice to hear that kind of connection that you've had is there. Because, man, I'll tell you, I just do not go out and look for it. It's not my, and to have happen. So if you can start an ethereal dating service, sign me up.
We'll look into it. We'll see what's required.
That'd be awesome. Any final words, Christy?
No, just I love you guys, and yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. You're helping to expand us all.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Krista.
Okay, well, go ahead and close till next week's session. We usually hang on afterwards for our own little banter.